Hello, everyone, and welcome to your next session. It is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker today. Next up, we have Aura Greenberg, and she's the Vice President, Data Analytics at Crown Castle. And today her talk is entitled, What Can Business Leaders Do to Open the Doors Further for AI in Telecom? So please welcome to our virtual stage, Aura Greenberg. Hi, Aura.
Hello, everybody.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to turn off my camera now and you can share your slides and take it away.
Great. Wonderful. Oh, let's see if I can. Okay, I think that's up and running now. Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to be here and I hope everybody's enjoying the conference. Again, my name is Aura Greenberg and I'm Vice President of Data Analytics at Crown Castle. Crown Castle is the largest shared provider of telecommunications infrastructure in the US. We have 40,000 towers, 70,000 small cells, and over 80,000 route miles of fibers in the country. My job is to figure out how to use data analytics, and in particular AI, to really to help Crown Castle build, manage, and operate the networks in support of our customers who provide critical telecommunications services to, frankly, all of us who have a cell phone, and to businesses who are dependent on connectivity for their day-to-day activities, particularly given our current circumstances. I don't have to tell folks that in telecom, the industry is going through a significant inflection point with the advent of 5G, which is pushing us to really reimagine what the networks of the future will look like. And AI is playing a critical role in that in areas such as network planning, operations, sales and marketing, and customer service. You name it, and it's really a significant impact that it's having, which I'm so excited to be part of. My talk's actually going to be a little bit different today. While I will touch upon it anecdotally, I'm actually not going to discuss the technical aspects of our work in detail. Rather, what I'd like to do is take an opportunity to share with you a playbook for business leaders whose job it is to scale or start up AI efforts within organizations. Maybe you're a chief data officer, or maybe you're a sales and marketing leader who's looking to figure out how to use AI in your business. In sharing my playbook, I really hope to just invite a dialogue with all of you so we can share learnings and help accelerate AI in our industry further. So with that, just a little bit about me and kind of just my own journey. Roughly 4 years ago, I took what I call the big leap. After 18 years in high tech and in Silicon Valley, first at Qualcomm, where I was focusing on wireless technology, and then secondly at Google, where I was working on wireless robotics and data, my family and I decided to move to Michigan. I traded the sun and surf for the snow and hockey, software for manufacturing, you can name it. It was a very big change in our lives. I joined General Motors as the leader in data and analytics to help build up the data science and AI efforts in that. Now, GM has the largest installed base of connected cars in the world, and mainly due to its OnStar business, which has had connected cars for over 20 years. To translate that into data speaks, that means that they have a whole lot of really good data. Data about how customers buy cars, use their cars, what's going on around the car. So really a treasure trove. They also have a long storied history of engineering, which is also critical, and then are also embarking on a big journey of innovation themselves with their investment in autonomous vehicles and electric vehicles, all areas where AI can have a significant impact. Similarly, when I joined Crown Castle almost a year ago now, I also saw a big opportunity to have data and analytics really impact the business. With a very unique set of assets in telecommunications infrastructure, as I mentioned, across towers, small cell and fiber, there's really an opportunity to really rethink how we build the networks of the future. And I think AI can play a significant role in that. This journey has been one of a lot of learning for me, and in particular has been one of really figuring out how to make AI a really pragmatic and practical endeavor for companies that are really in some phase of transformation, whether it's a digital transformation or a data analytics transformation. Not really about maybe the companies who have AI and even data at their core, but really those that are taking these technologies and trying to figure out how to embed them into their business to drive value. So as you can imagine, it didn't take me too long to figure out that I had a whole lot to learn in this process. And of course, the first thing I do when I don't know how to do something is research it. My research really consisted of, frankly, calling all my friends and everybody that I knew to learn a little bit more about this. And I talked to folks who were technologists and who were building the platforms to really democratize the use of AI, across the world. And then I also talked to leaders who were at companies that were transforming and were trying to take those technologies and embed them into their business. And there's really kind of in that process, one big theme that came across, which is this mystery of the lost AI opportunity, where companies were investing significantly, but really were having challenges reaping the high value that this can bring in their organizations. And really came across in three specific symptoms, I guess you would say. One of them is, programs or initiatives that were frankly on the shelves and never rolled out into production. So proof of concepts that had potential that simply hadn't been rolled out at scale. Market optimization programs. I saw churn reduction programs that just simply had not been used. And it wasn't really for lack of trying. It was really, at the end of the day, just the challenges that getting through that operationalization process were really difficult. Secondly, really data science efforts that weren't really linked to the business values or the business high value problems of the organization. And so as a result, they were viewed as kind of science experiments. Now, if you're in an R&D group and your goal is to do long-term research, perhaps that's great. But I live in a world of kind of applied data science where you're really looking to drive business value. So when it's not tied to kind of the key goals of the company, it can get kind of become an island, which kind of leads me to my third point, that you did see data science teams that were somewhat organizationally an island within their orgs. They weren't really integrated well into the business teams. They weren't integrated well into the technical teams, whether that's IT or engineering. And as a result, we're usually underfunded and usually frustrated because their really great work wasn't being used. So the big question, why was this happening? And really the big aha that I had is that, we had worked a lot on the technology. We had more data than ever. And we also had people with great technical skills. But at the end of the day, it was the non-technical issues that were holding us back. Issues around, changing business processes, changing organizational structures, changing the culture in order for your company to be more data-driven. And so, one case in point of the work that I'm currently doing right now is that we're leveraging AI right now to better understand our customers' network needs for today and in the future. Now, the AI is difficult, and obviously we're having our kind of the normal ups and downs of that effort. But I actually would say that the bigger challenges we're having is the fact as we go through this process, it's causing us as a company to really rethink our go-to-market strategies, whether it's our sales processes, whether it's sometimes even the compensation schemes of our sales teams, and even the skill sets we have across the organization. AI, the changes that AI can bring can be very broad and deep. And in fact, I would argue if you're doing AI well, you want to be having that kind of impact. It is about changing the way the business looks and actually operates completely. But with that comes an onus to manage that change very deliberately. And I think that's where business leaders can come in and really open the doors for these efforts. So so over the years, I've started to cobble together what I think of kind of like a playbook for starting up and or scaling these efforts. It's very much a work in progress. And so as I kind of learn more about this, and I really would welcome any feedback or ideas. The playbook is really composed first of two lenses I think business leaders need to have, and that is the lens of the startup founder and then the lens of the product manager, and I'll talk about that in a second. And then on the right, you see the 5 things that I think are kind of the biggest bang for your buck on which to focus. Sure, there's like a very long list of other things, but these are the 5 that I tend to think of the ones that really are the ones that kind of really drive and accelerate the programs. So let me start with the startup founder. Why does it make sense to think like a startup founder when you're trying to scale these efforts? Well, it's interesting, and even in the press and the literature, we hear kind of 2 things around this effort. First one is that there's an imperative to invest, right? If you don't invest in AI, you're going to get left behind, or you're going to miss out on innovation. In the same breath, though, we also hear that 80 to 90% of these initiatives fail, right? So as business leaders, what are we supposed to do with that? And really, as somebody who worked in mergers and acquisitions in Silicon Valley for a long time, this actually looks quite familiar. It looks like a startup, very high promise, but very high risk. And really, the one critical thing startups have to do is they have to really be able to constantly sell the vision for what they're trying to do. They will get said no to a lot. There will be a lot of closed doors. And in fact, in working with a lot of the founders in the Valley, one of the things that I always heard was this common gripe that, they were ex-engineers and now they're having to spend 80% of their time, frankly, talking to people like me at that time, selling their vision and trying to get funding. And it can't take that much time. So that's one job that the business leader can do in order to really help open the doors for their data science efforts. It's sort of be the founder, sell the vision, and get the money. And secondly, wear a product manager hat. And so what does that mean? AI and machine learning are a set of technologies which are amazing, but they do have to be turned into a product for the benefit of a specific user. And not just that, the user has to be willing to pay for those, the value of those products. And so that requires having a product mindset where you're really thinking about it end to end as a system, and perhaps thinking about upstream systems that need to change or downstream processes that need to change, sometimes training that may need to be put in place. I think about like a marketing plan sometimes. So it really requires a product lens on it. So with being a startup founder and being a product manager, I'll spend the rest of the talk discussing the 5 key areas in a very tactical way and really sharing some frameworks that have helped me along the way. And again, I would welcome feedback on these. So first and foremost, as a startup founder, you have to identify your customer. And really, in reality, in many cases, you have to figure out who your early adopter is going to be with these efforts. I also like to call them your co-conspirators, your partners in crime, people in your organization that are going to want to drive change as much as you do. And I have these 5 characteristics that I often look at, but I'm going to share 3 tips for finding these people in your organization. One of them is that there's a tendency to think that you should find these folks outside of the org. Perhaps it's somebody new that has come in with a new perspective. I actually have been more successful finding the change agents that have been at the company for a long time. And these are the folks that are trusted, they're credible, they have driven change before, and hence they know how to do it within the specific culture of that organization. So these are the folks that you really want to partner with. Secondly, make sure they're senior enough. And by senior enough, they think they need to be VP level or above. It hasn't been my experience that driving AI efforts in a company can be fully a grassroots efforts or bottoms up. There truly does need to be a top-down perspective, and folks need to be behind it who can both harness the resources that are necessary, and number 2, bring about the organizational process changes that may be necessary. So find those really senior folks. And the third thing is, and I'll just touch upon it, is that there's also, I think, a tendency to think that you want to find the folks that are, data or quantitatively inclined. And I think that's helpful, but I don't know that it's necessary. In fact, I've had much more success finding really just a very strong strategic leaders who are hungry for change. And they're the ones who are really going to be willing to go through the journey with you, in particular when through the ups and downs that we know a lot of these programs have. So finding your customers. So once you find your customers, of course, they are going to have many, many ideas about what you should focus on. Everything from sometimes even operational reporting all the way through true AI and data science efforts, and then everything in between. There may be a lot of education you have to do, right, around what the differences are and so forth. And so I have a 4-box kind of checkbox that I use. My team does not take on any initiative unless it meets this 4-box framework. So I'll talk about a few really quickly. One of them is obviously finding the highest value opportunity linked to the strategy of the company. And I'll emphasize with an early win. I like to think about a 3 to 6 month window. And again, if you're sitting in an R&D kind of role in your company, that may be completely different. If you're sitting in an applied area, I think it may make sense to really think about how you can show value very quickly. Secondly, that stakeholder commitment to the journey. Now, I mentioned the early adopter. This is your stakeholder, but I'm going to emphasize the word commitment. How do you get somebody to commit with you to go through the roller coaster that these programs can be? So one way that I've found that has been really effective has been to actually align my team's OKRs to those that you're supporting, or basically my objectives and key results. So as a result, if we're supporting the sales teams, I actually have incremental sales targets that my team needs to hit. And this creates 2 things. One, it creates this sort of feeling of we're both in the same boat. So it creates a lot of incentive alignment. And importantly, it also creates really laser focus for your team and what they need to achieve. The third thing I'll mention is, have a high likelihood to operationalize. So what does that mean? And maybe an anecdote is probably best to show this. We worked on one program where we were looking to optimize the outbound telemarketing efforts at a company. And the biggest issue that this effort, this really kind of high potential effort was sitting on the shelf was because it would require us to really renegotiate the vendor, the outbound telemarketing vendor who would actually execute it. We'd have to renegotiate that contract to make it work. And nobody had really taken it on, right? It had nothing to do with the technology, nothing to do with the systems, but simply somebody just had to go and figure out how to renegotiate that contract. So the earlier you can get line of sight into those kinds of issues, the better off you'll be, and also assessing whether it's doable or not, right? If we weren't able to negotiate that contract, why invest the resources in that program at that time? So finally, having the right technical resources, your technical teams will tell you what those are. And again, your job is to actually figure out how to get that money. So with that, how do you get that money? So, and remember, you have to think like a startup in this part of the puzzle. And so I'll tell a quick anecdote on a personal level to kind of illustrate. And so I have 3 children. They're 8, 6, and 3. And recently, actually last week, they came and showed me this picture of this castle that you see here on your left. It's made out of magnetiles. They told me they modeled it after Hogwarts, and they proceeded then to show me a picture of the extension they wanted to put on this castle, and then told me, of course, that they didn't have any more magnetiles. Then they sent in their 3-year-old sister, who asked for more magnetiles and proceeded to remind me that her birthday was coming up. So this is like really ideal fundraising, right? They showed me a proof of concept. They showed me the vision of what they wanted to do. And importantly, they sent in the right person to ask, right? Like the really cute 3-year-old that I'm like never going to say no to. So similarly, when you're looking at funding your projects, first of all, think about where you are in that curve. Are you in constant validation mode? And if so, ask commensurately with that, right? If you're just getting out, don't be worried to just cobble together a small prototype, sometimes even with people's 20% time, so that you can actually show somebody what you're trying to build, even if it's not great. There's nothing more than speaks worse than just showing somebody what you're trying to do and showing that potential. Secondly, paint a picture of the vision. And again, I'm going to reiterate that vision needs to outline how you're going to either drive more top line or increase productivity within the company. And thirdly, and importantly, send in the right person. I've had the most success kind of getting these efforts funded when it actually hasn't been me or my team asking. It's been the partner or that stakeholder that you're partnering with. Maybe it's the sales leader who's banking on your project to help them, or the marketing person who's also banking on your project to help them, and have them help you do some of that selling and ask. So it doesn't always have to be you as well. So awesome. So now we have found our customer. We've prioritized our opportunities of what we're going to do, and we've gotten the funding we need. And now we have to think about execution. And this is where we kind of put our product management hat on. And I call it minding the bookends of the process. And so this is a very high level, process for the purposes of this presentation, but really focusing on the big blue boxes on either end, where as a product manager, you have to help the team make sure that the problem you're defining is really the right one. Sounds easy, it's really critical, and often we don't do it well enough. So as an example, I'll tell you, we had another marketing program where we were looking at the direct mail channels and optimizing that. And again, we had a very high potential proof of concept that had been validated, and yet the teams were not.
Quick 5-minute warning.
Thank you. The teams were not really hooking onto it. And the main reason was that the marketing leader was even asking himself if he should even be doing direct channel mail to begin with for his customers. So again, find the right question and get alignment with your stakeholder. And then similarly, on the validation operationalization side, that's where you're starting to really iterate on the business process. And again, this is really a change management exercise, and it's messy, and it requires you to really get aligned with the org and the stakeholder that you're working with. And again, another place where I think you wear your product management hat, you roll up your sleeves and you work alongside your data science teams. So putting it together is really kind of how do you put a team together that can execute on this. I won't talk about the technical teams, but I will point to the boxes that said product manager. Those are the critical roles that I focus on. They are folks that have high domain experts, have a data obviously background and a product management mindset. It's very hard to find these people. My biggest trick has been to find people within the organization that are trusted and domain experts, and then upskill and train them very deliberately. maybe an engineer who's ready for a more business-facing role, or a business person who has a technical background. And then at the end of the day, your job as a leader is to really drive the collaboration across this entire team so that you can get to the results that you want. So there you have it. In order to increase the chance of these initiatives succeeding, this is what's been working for me. I'd love to hear what you've come across and what's been working for you, but be the startup founder, be the product manager, and then these 5 things are the ones that I've been focusing on. So thank you so much for listening. I hope to connect with all of you at some point.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. That was an awesome talk. If you could unshare your camera for a second, please. And I hope that you all enjoyed. Please give Aura a warm virtual round of applause, and you can make your way over to your next session. Have a great time.